I wasn't expecting to give this presentation the way that I am now because Nick, Dr. Claxton, was supposed to be here, but he's had one of his daughters has fallen ill and had to bring her to the clinic. I think everything's okay, but he can't be here, unfortunately, which is too bad because Nick has been instrumental in the work that I'm going to talk about today, which was really kind of the reestablishment of a way of fishing here that was absolutely central, as I understand it, to this place, to the Strait Salish and the Salish Sea. I want to acknowledge that I'm on Coast Salish territory, and I want to thank you for this is a real privilege for me as a settler, somebody who grew up in Victoria from immigrant parents. So that story was very impactful. Who doesn't feel that connection to my homeland, which is Northern Europe, and feels a deep connection here, but also a sense of placelessness because of not knowing the stories, not knowing the practices, not knowing the ceremonies that are associated with this place. So it's with a deep appreciation and humbleness to present something that is not mine, that is not part of my history or heritage. But as somebody as an outsider, to sort of appreciate the revival of something so important and to be witness to that has been a real privilege. So I want to talk today about the work that has been undertaken to reestablish the reef net fishery. And Belinda, please correct me. The swallow, is that close? Which basically had been outlawed for, I understand, over 100 years here on the Canadian side of the border. And in the past couple of years, so the image before you is from Lummi, which is the group across the strait that shares ties with the Salish people. And here they're undergoing a ceremony with the model and to start, as I understand it, to basically start the fishery. So the reef net is a fixed net, very ingenious, basically positioned at places along the shore where to capture this, rather than the people here didn't have access to rivers, and so they fished the sea and they fished the rivers of fish and intercepted them before they moved into the river system. So they were catching them really at the premium point in their life cycle. This is an absolutely ingenious way of fishing, demonstrating an incredible knowledge of this place, an understanding of tides and timing. And also, as somebody looking in the outside, really kind of knit this place, really connected this place, both culturally, economically. These sites, as I understand it, were owned by families. This is a right that was exercised and passed down by families. But in order to exercise this responsibility, it had to be undertaken with others. So there was deep ties between families and groups in order to exercise and to take advantage of this amazingly plentiful resource. And so the fish would enter, these nets would be placed, and the fisher would enter and would come into basically another net that was held between two canoes. the, the, the front piece basically mimicked the ocean bottom. So the fish would be kind of gently escorted up until they found themselves where they could not escape. But also in a very kind of caring and just a really, it really kind of shows you it demonstrates kind of the sophistication of this approach, is that there was a hole in the back end of the net that allowed fish to escape as well. And I understand that when the first fish were caught, the fishery would be shut down, and they would go into celebration and ceremony to basically honor the coming again of the salmon people. And in this sort of exercising of, in a way, of a fishery with ceremony and appreciation, allowed for kind of the passage of fish. So it wasn't just this wholesale harvesting of the resource, and there was this kind of this respect given that allowed it to continue on. And you can imagine at that time that the fish stocks are just incredibly abundant, and there would have been a lot of compulsion to a lot of opportunity to take a more fulsome advantage of the resource, but it wasn't. So this is the area that we're talking about, and my understanding is that this way of fishing is very unique to this area and the way that it was conducted. And so it's the cluster of islands in the center off of the peninsula that where the focus of most of this fishing occurred. I'm not sure if you can make this out, but this is a map showing the Gulf Islands, some of the Gulf Islands where these sites are known to have been placed. So the revival of this activity is something that's occurring across the Salish Sea. So the folks from Lummi have started a couple years previous to exercise this way of fishing, and have basically the approach has been maintained in the fishing community, the non-Indigenous fishing community, and they've used kind of modern approaches. But the Lummi have been now working to reestablish sort of a more traditional way, which has included the building of craft as well, canoes as well. So Nick and others from Sayout and I think Sartlip, the communities here on the peninsula, visited with the Lummi to basically understand more completely how to undertake this type of a fishery. So there's been this transfer of knowledge and this remembering that's occurring here in the Salish Sea, which is pretty incredible. And the coming together of families that have been separated by an international border. Not only practices, but there's been this real separation between these two communities, which had a lot more closer connection and ties prior to colonization. And there's been a coming together in order to undertake this. There's been a coming together of different communities. So this is Nick, who's sitting at the head of the table there, Nick Claxton from Sayout, and then Adam Olson, who's sitting beside him with the sunglasses, who's from Sartlip, which is across the peninsula, and then Eric Palke's there from Sayout, meeting with our Economic Development Commission. And in the Southern Gulf Islands, where I'm from, where I call home, we're really struggling economically. And there's been a coming together of our two communities in sort of a collective interest to try to, how do we overcome the kind of challenges of living in this place where a lot of our resources have been depleted, where there's not much industrial activity, and where there's a real interest in protecting and preserving the natural environment. How do we live here? And how do our children continue to live and prosper here? And what's been quite exciting is our communities, both the indigenous and settler communities, coming together to try to figure this out, because we were kind of both stuck. And this activity, the reestablishment of the reef net fishery, posed an opportunity for us to actually discover this together through a cultural activity that was significant and important in the past. And maybe through that we could learn something. In addition, this activity offers an opportunity to establish, this is also about asserting rights. And this is contested territory with the interest of moving diluted bitumen through the strait, through the Kinder Morgan, with the development of the Kinder Morgan pipeline. So this exercising of a right is not only important culturally, not only important from a perspective of connecting our communities and maybe reestablishing a fishery that makes more sense, but also this is potential leverage to prevent and to block the intentions of others to increase industrial activity in this space. And so I took this photo. I had a bunch of other ones. The kinds of discussions and dialogue that were occurring, I think, were historical. Just coming together to figure, how do we do this? And where you saw history and hurt and the kinds of impact that colonialization has had and settlement has had, both internally within the Saanich communities, but also between our communities, both indigenous and non-indigenous, was something incredible to witness. Where in order, the opportunity to exercise and to reestablish this fishery was front and center. And one conversation, I remember, because there's a lot of history between the bands, and the bands as a function is something that is actually kind of as I understand it again, is a colonial imposition. And there's a lot of recent history, and to the point where there's known frictions, and the ability to get things done, to do things together, is challenged by that, challenged by that kind of harm. And having this goal of getting nets in the water helped us overcome those kinds of challenges that had prevented activities from occurring in the past. So in order to undertake the activity, ceremony is important. Actually, I got this slide mixed up. This is Nick's defense. This is supposed to come before. So Nick Claxton, this has been sort of the center. This has been a personal journey for him, as I understand it. And something that he's carried with such grace and tenacity. It's just been impressive to behold. And this sort of quiet persistence that this is something important to undertake has been, it's just been a real honor to witness. And it, culminated with his completion of his and defense of his thesis earlier this summer. So that was just. So I don't have many pictures from the ceremony, unfortunately. I'm going to show a quick film as a way of kind of capping this off, because I think, and Nick will be able to speak through the film. But we had a ceremony here, basically to start things off in a good way, and which they had built a model in the school, in the tribal school. And there was an honoring, and we had families that had come over that were here, but also families that had come over from the San Juans, from Lummi. There was I guess there were secret ceremonies that I don't have pictures of, and dances that were, again, that hadn't been practiced or shown in recent years. And you could see there was this real feeling of revival and renewal and reconnection. An incredible experience.
Siam Nistelicha, Humthol, Danasne, Sulasan at Stay Out. Neath Kusanich, Dana Elanganak. I said my name's Humthol, and I come from Stay Out, the Stay Out community, and I'm from the Saanich Nation. My work has been focused on revitalizing the traditional knowledge system and practice of the Saanich reef net fishery. And that was something that was wrongfully taken away from us probably a century ago. There are only a few last remaining reef net fishermen in my community. They're elders. So I've been really focused on trying to get this back to the community.
Okay, it's got to be lifted up a bit in the front here.
Reef net fishing it's a fishing technology that was given to us by, we believe, by the Creator and by the salmon people. The reef net did two things. It distinguished our people as a nation because we were the only people, the Strait Salish people were the only ones who had this reef net fishing technology. But it also brought us together as a nation. We're known as the Saanich people, and some people call us the saltwater people because if you look at our traditional territory, it's just as much marine environment as it is land. So our territory is really water. The Douglas Treaty was, in our oral history, not necessarily a treaty in terms of how mainstream Canada thinks of a treaty as a land cession treaty. We feel it was more of a recognition of our nationhood and more of an agreement between two nations of people. One of the things that the Douglas Treaty says is that we're allowed to carry on our fisheries as formerly. Quite often you would hear our elders talk about the reef net as the princess of the tides. Just as women and females create life and give life, so does the reef net. It gives us life.
We're almost ready to set
Very
this.
exciting.
I'm like ready to put this on. Nick, you gotta watch this.
We're reef netting again. So it's a stationary technology. It's anchored. The lead is anchored. The canoes are anchored, and the net is suspended in the water between those canoes. And it took a lot of knowledge of where the salmon would migrate, as well as the knowledge of the flow of the tides. That reef net fishery formed the core of our society at that time. It was the way we governed ourselves. It was the core of our spiritual society, core of our economic system, social system. It was really the backbone of our people. One of the things that my uncle said along this journey is he said, "I hear you want to bring the reef net fishery back." And I said, "Yeah, I do. You can't just go out and go fishing," he said. "You need to do it through ceremony first." So I've been working with the children in our local community school, we started to build this model net together. In that way, we learned together about the beliefs and the philosophies around this net. And it even became a centerpiece of the whole school year, where the teachers in the school, the socials teachers and the science teachers, started to teach their subject around this project. In that sense, it was kind of bringing back the Reef net as a backbone of our education system. It's my vision, all of our vision, that we can all be Reef net fishing people again.
Isn't that a great story? I'm just going to close. I mean, there's a lot in this world that that takes away from our hope, and now I'm getting emotional. It's hard not to get emotional here when you see this coming together, but it is a story of hope, and I think what Paul was talking about, this idea of this notion of culture being our medicine is really critical. And for those of us who don't feel like we're connected, those of us who are immigrants that have lost that connection from our home territories, this ability to connect into a place is so critically important. And witness that. Is truly impressive, and to see what it brings out. And to me, this is the social innovation piece. Is for in order to do this, we had to let go of a lot of things. The conversations that we had, that they had history. They had to let go of a lot of personal history and hurt. In order to fill the boats with active paddlers, the conversation was about, do we let women do the paddling? And for me, one of the most powerful moments was when a woman elder came in the room and said, we were important members of this community, and in order to act, in order to undertake these things, it wasn't just about cleaning fish. These traditions have to, if they're going to continue, they have to evolve. And that means accepting new ways and inviting new members into that community to undertake and to continue with that. And so that kind of opening up, that kind of ability to overcome obstacle, there was every reason why this shouldn't have happened. And it did. And now I guess the next challenge is how do we continue and advance this in a way that connects us up to our communities? And how do we connect this to other things? Because it's easy to say, well, that's, very nice, and that's very historical and, culturally important. But why is it significant? Why does it matter? And how does it connect to our current situation? So I think that's the challenge, to both share the story and advance it, and to revive those familial connections that connect all of us to this place. This story connects, there's another emerging story, and it's interesting, the saltwater people also, Wasanich, the emerging people. And I think that's really a beautiful and auspicious title to have at this point in time. So another emerging story from this place is the understanding that people along the coast here also cultivated the shoreline. And so we're discovering clam gardens. And there's these incredibly rich and productive areas that were maintained on the shoreline, where the shoreline was modified in order to increase the productivity, particularly for clams. And we're discovering this all over up and down the coast here in the Gulf Islands and in the San Juan Islands. And there's a community of people that are coming together to study and understand this, that bridge, again, similar to this project, that bridge across cultures in order to understand and potentially revive this. And we're seeing now a connection between that group that has got resources and support to our group. So they've acquired a boat that can go and map out these areas. It's got this sonar, I guess, and the ability for us to use it to actually map out and locate these reef net fishing sites, which are below the low tide mark. So we're seeing these kinds of activities and that connect us back to history and traditions that are helping us connect and work through some of the challenges that we're facing as a community of interest today. Back again and connecting back to the previous presentation, this idea of being disconnected and the importance of reconnecting. The biologist Umberto Maturana said the best way to heal a system, or the way to heal a system, is to reconnect it back to itself. And we're seeing that happen. And it's not only internally within these communities, but the external connections are happening as well. And to me, that's the social innovation that's occurring here. That's really inspiring and hopeful. So thank you.